We're here today on Saturday, April 12th at Lake Barrington Wood. My name is Jared Howe, and I'm with the Pritzker Military Museum and Library. And I'm here with Robert Reiger of the United States Air Force. And we're here to get your oral history. So, first of all, I'd just like to thank you for coming. And we'll go ahead and start at the beginning. You told me just a moment ago there was a coincidence with meeting the other Bob.
Yeah, Bob Shanice and I met Bob a few days after we moved in here at a Friday afternoon social here, and I learned that he was born the very same day I was.
Which was what?
May 21st, 1923. In all my 90 years, I've never had that happen, and neither has Bob.
Wow.
And we've become very good friends.
Yeah.
He's good people. And his wife, Terry, is very nice. So we have a nice relationship.
Nice. That makes it comfortable.
Yes. I was born in the north side of Chicago.
Okay.
Went to Brentano grade school. Went to Lane Technical High School, which you may have heard of. It was quite new at the time.
My fiance actually works there.
Oh, uh-huh.
She teaches English.
We had 10,000 boys there when I attended Lane High School.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's why it's so big.
Yes. Of course, it's co-ed now, has been for several years, but it has a fine reputation scholastically. And I enjoyed my 4 years. Of course, my folks never owned a house. We moved a lot. My 4 years in high school, I had 3 different addresses. I joined the Lane Symphony Orchestra. I had started playing the violin when I was about 9 years old. And really played the violin until I went into service, 20. And while I was in high school, I really developed into a pretty good violinist. When I was a freshman, somebody sold me a ticket to the concert for 35 cents. And when I saw that 90-piece symphony orchestra on the stage, I said, I have to be part of that.
Nice.
So the next day I went up to the music department, and I wasn't good enough to be in the orchestra. I had to attend a class a couple times a week. Other aspiring violin players wanting to get into the orchestra. Because if you wanted to be a musician in Chicago, you wanted to go to Lane High School. They had a 4-year music course. Lane at that time was a technical school. I did not have a music course. My first 2 years, I had shop. I had wood shop for 1 year and electric shop. And after 2 years, you decided if you were going to college, you had to stop the shops and take a language. Or if you didn't go to college, you took a shop that you liked, wood shop, you want to be a carpenter, you want to be an auto mechanic. You took that for the final 2 years, but I decided I might be going to college, I better prepare for that. So I stopped the shops and took language. But anyway, my second semester, I finally got into the orchestra, the back of the second violin section. By the time I finished my sophomore year, or into my junior year, I was head of the second violin section. And my senior year, I made the first violin section. I had worked very hard, practiced to start taking lessons again. I took lessons from a former violin player with the Lane Orchestra. He was a concertmaster, and now he was going to Northwestern as a student, but he gave me a lesson a week for $1.
Oh, wow.
So I studied with Melvin Baden, a very fine violinist. My senior year, when I was about ready to graduate, he asked me if I'd be interested in a music scholarship to Northwestern. Well, I never considered myself, I never thought that would happen to me. So I said, well, give me a week. And I decided no. I hated to do that, but I did not want to live the life of a musician. I realized that I probably wasn't talented enough to be a violin player in Chicago Symphony Orchestra, which would have been marvelous. They make excellent money. But I probably wasn't that good. And I could end up playing at some Dan orchestra. You know the Lawrence Welk Orchestra? Have you ever seen Lawrence Welk on Saturday nights? He has 3 violins. I could do that. I was good enough to do that. So I said, no, I'm not going to be a musician. I'll turn down the opportunity to get it. There was no guarantee I'd get it anyway. But from there, I went to Wright Junior College for 2 years, and I played in their orchestra. Was concertmaster my last semester there in that orchestra, but that wasn't that big an orchestra. But now my military career, I guess that's what I should get into next.
No, that's actually I was gonna take a step back. What did your mother and father do for a living?
My dad was a milkman, worked for Borden's. My mother was a housewife, did not work. I was an only child.
Okay.
I enjoyed my childhood. I didn't feel disadvantaged because I was an only child. We always had one-bedroom apartments. I slept on the cot in the dining room. But my dad made pretty good money as a milkman. I remember very well, $42.50 a week. And during the Depression, of course, a lot of people worked for $18, $19 a week.
Sure.
Of course, my dad worked 6 days a week, long hours and hard work.
Yeah.
But I felt we were quite comfortable.
Nice.
I was not hungry, and yet in my grade school, I always felt there was a couple of kids that probably didn't get enough to eat during the 30s.
Yeah.
I thought some of them probably, but I felt fortunate. I had, my dad had some brothers, and I was an only child, but my dad's family was quite large, so I saw a lot of my cousins, and had a good childhood. When we were 1936, my dad lost his job. The end of the milkman came about because during the recession, prior to the recession, you bought a quart of milk from the milkman for the same price you got it at the grocery store. With the recession, you began to sell milk, only quarts. We had nothing larger than quarts in those days. And the grocery stores were selling it for a penny or two less than you got from milkmen. That killed the milk route. My dad finally was laid off. So he had somewhat of a promise of a job in San Diego, California, and we sold off and drove out there to San Diego, California in 1927, Studebaker,
Wow.
and lived out there for about a year and a half. My dad never got a decent job while we were out there. He worked, but had several jobs in the year and a half. So we came back to Chicago in time for me to start high school. I was 14. I never had it. When I went to San Diego, California, they had junior high schools. I was not used to that. Chicago, we had 8 years of grade school. You stayed in the same classroom all day.
Right.
In junior high school, like high school, you went to a different class, different room for every class. So we got out there in March of 36. I finished up that school year. I was lost. I didn't do very well in school. But then we moved to another part of town, and I started at another junior high school and spent a year there and did okay there. Then we came back, and I started at Lane High School. I enjoyed my 4 years at Lane. I was a good student, had good grades. I averaged 92, was upper 10% of my graduating class. And then I went to Wright Junior College in Chicago, 2-year school. My folks didn't have the money to send me to another college, so 2 years I paid my way. It wasn't very expensive. We had an athletic fee of $25 a semester. That's what it cost to go to the Wright Junior College.
Wow.
Of course, you had to buy your books. So 2 years at Wright. Anything else you want to ask about that? Because now my military career starts to enter.
Well, that was actually what I was going to segue into is where were you and how did you find out that you'd been drafted?
Well, about 6 months before I thought I was probably going to be drafted, I went to my draft board and asked to have a little extension so I could finish 2 years at Wright Junior College. And they granted me that 6 months extension. With that, I did want to get into the Air Force. The infantry, that kind of life didn't appeal to me. So I went to the Army. The Air Force was still part of the Army then. The Air Force was part of the Army until 1947, by the way, Jerry. 1947.
Okay.
Anyway, I went downtown Chicago, applied for the Army Air Force Cadet Training Program. I passed the medical and physical exams for that. So it was arranged that when I would be drafted, I would go right to the Army Air Force basic training. So as soon as I finished Wright Junior College, I finished my second year. Within a week, I got my letter. Report to Miami Beach around the middle of July 1943 for basic training.
How did your family, your friends react to this change in your career path, your life?
Oh, well, it was expected.
Yeah.
If you were a young fella, 20 years old, you were expected to go into service.
But you were a violin player.
Oh, well, when I finished Wright Junior College, that ended my violin career.
Okay.
I will say this, though, while there, I did play a little professionally. We had a dance orchestra, which we played Friday afternoon dances in the gym. And then the fellow who headed up the orchestra, it seems to me he was a student at Wright College forever. He'd get us jobs at bar mitzvahs and Jewish weddings, and we got $5 for that.
Nice.
So we got paid, got fed, and
Yeah.
enjoyed that very much. But anyway, back to the military. So we headed down to Miami Beach, Florida. I hated Miami Beach, Florida. July, August, and September, no air conditioning.
Yeah, those are some hot months.
And the Air Force had most of the hotels in Miami Beach. For basic, yeah. I was in a small hotel right in Indian Creek. Nice area. But after a few weeks, we all had prickly heat all over our bodies due to perspiring heavily and not showering till late in the day, so we had prickly heat. I decided basic training is there for two reasons. One, to get you in good physical condition and indoctrinate you into the military. I learned quickly that certainly during wartime, they own you.
Mm-hmm.
As the other Bob mentioned, you don't question what they tell you to do. You better not to question it, just do it. And it has a purpose. Discipline is very important in a successful military, and a lot of the stuff they do, it's hard to understand why they do it, but it has a purpose. Because no matter what the command is, you're going to do it in the military. So that's what I learned. Now, upon finishing 3 months there, I was sent to West Virginia University for about 5 months of college, Morgantown, West Virginia. As an underclassman, we slept in the old library, but we had civilian cooking. It was very good. There were 300 of our cadets there, Army Air Force cadets, and about 500 Army engineers all going to school. There weren't many civilian boys on campus. So on Saturday night, you wanted a date, you just call a dormitory or a dormitory where the girls were, and you say, hey, I'm looking for a date tonight. So you always had a date on Saturday nights, either the college girl or the girl you met downtown at the department store or the drugstore. So I enjoyed my life there very much.
What were you there training to do?
Well, we went to college. I don't remember all the subjects anymore. Something to do with military, I guess. We had physical training, and they had 10 hours of flying instruction, and little Aeronicas. They were like a Piper Cub, two-seater, single-wing plane. And I had 10 hours of flying, and I never soloed. We didn't do that, but we had civilian instructors, and the civilian instructor I had was a terrible individual. I can't repeat the names he called me the entire time I was in the air. He did that to all his students. If we were civilians, you'd hit him. Because the whole time I was in the air. And it was rude, and I didn't look forward to flying because of that, but I did enjoy the flying part. We did the stalls and spins and landings. The final lesson, we got different instructors, and this instructor was very nice. I made the perfect landing for him, and I'm sure he graded me very well. But from there, we went to, I believe it was Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a little vague about this part. Now, we went there for a week we were tested, constantly being tested mentally. That was to determine whether we were going to go to pilot's training, bombardier training, or navigator training. Well, they washed out most of us. It was getting a little late in the war now.
Hmm.
And the only fellas that I got to the 3 officers training schools were the guys who were 26, 27, 28 years old. You could get in the Air Force cadet training program as late as 28.
Wow.
All my buddies, 20-year-old guys, we all washed out. Then we were given a choice of radio school, airplane mechanics, or gunnery. You're a little depressed about now. So I took radio school at Scottsfield, Illinois, down near St. Louis, close to Chicago.
Nice.
And that's where I went.
And you went because it was your closest opportunity to be being towards Chicago?
Yes, and radio school, that was just to be a gunner. Then radio school seemed to be a little more challenge to me, and which it was. It was 6 months training. They were operating radio school 24 hours a day, 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. I was fortunate to have a Monday to Friday schedule from 8 to 5. So it was like going to work. And then on Wednesday night, I get out of the post. Saturday night, I could go into St. Louis, a great town for socializing. CYO, of course, downtown St. Louis. And never paid for a ride to St. Louis. You always got on the highway and thumbed your way to St. Louis. Downtown St. Louis was about 15 miles away is all.
Wow.
So I spent 6 months there. Met a girl, starts dating a girl quite regularly there. After 6 months, there was a few of us were asked if we would be interested in become a radio operator in the B-29, just coming aboard. It was the fall of 1944. And I met another 4 or 6 weeks at Scott Field, and I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. So we finished, got another 4 or 6 weeks of either the transmitter or the receiver was different. So we spent a few weeks getting acquainted with that. From there, I was sent to Pyote, Texas. Little town of 5, by the way.
Huh.
Yeah, there was a gas station there,
Wow.
plus an Army air base.
Wow.
It was out in the panhandle of Texas. Nothing around there for 75 miles. It was like being overseas for the next 5 months.
Pretty much, yeah.
But that's where our crews were formed.
Okay.
Your airplane commanders, as they were called in V-29, came there. And the records for the bombardiers, the navigators, the radar operators, the gunners, the radio operators, they were all there. Records were there. In fact, the first few weeks I did nothing, so they were advertised for help in the office, so I applied for the job and I got a little extra money for that, working in the office. Well, I'm working in the office one day, and this captain came up to me. He said, I've read your records. I'd like you to be my radio operator. I'm Captain Clyde Netherton. I said, Captain, I'd be happy to be in your crew. So our crews were formed. We began flying training missions all over the country, 3-4 hour training missions. After about 5 months, we left there for Topeka, Kansas. And this was taken at Topeka, Kansas in February of 1945. This is my crew. I'm in the bottom row, second from the right.
I like that.
But most of these fellows are gone today. I stayed in contact with a couple of fellows, John Capozzo, the navigator. He was the intellect of the group. Our airplane commander was Clyde. There's Clyde, the commander. He was 25 years old. John was about 24. And I stayed in contact, met John a few times, and Hosey Smith, Southern boy. I corresponded with Hosey for quite a few years. But I moved around a lot, kind of lost contact with him. But John Capozzo, the navigator, I saw his death notice in the Chicago Tribune about 3 years ago. He was being buried in Dallas, Texas. And I knew John had 2 children. So I called the funeral home. And I said, I'd like to speak to, I couldn't remember their names, but you're burying John Capozzo. Yes, I'd like to speak to his daughter or his son. The fellow said, I can't do that. I can't arrange for that. But give me your phone number and I'll see if they'll contact you, which I did. And a half hour later, I got a call from John's daughter. I'd never met her, but I told her who I was. And I said, if you have this picture in front of you, she says, I do have. So I'll name all those fellas for you.
Wow.
And so we had a nice conversation.
Wow.
John was 92 at the time. He'd passed away. And so that's the last contact I have with the fellas. And here is a record of my missions.
Wow.
The first column gives the date of the mission. Then you see the place we bombed. Tokyo was my first mission.
Wow.
We arrived in Saipan early April of 1945. From Topeka, Kansas, we flew out to Mather Field, Sacramento. Spent a couple of weeks there, getting prepared for overseas. One night we flew into San Francisco Hamilton Field, and about midnight we took off. First stop was Hawaiian Islands. We spent about 4 days there, and we took off, made another landing at Johnson Island, and then got over to Saipan early April 1945. Made several training missions in Saipan. While there, one of the fellows I went to radio school with, Aloysius Reiger, another Reiger, was killed on a training mission. A good friend. I lost him before he ever flew a combat mission. His crew was killed in a training mission. So May 23rd, we flew our first mission. It was Tokyo. Pretty exciting. The second day after my 22nd birthday. May 21st was my birthday. May 23rd, we flew over Tokyo.
Jeez.
Exciting time. We always flew nighttime missions. We would take off about 8, 9 o'clock at night, be assigned a speed of 190 to 200 miles an hour. We would rendezvous about 100, 150 miles off the coast of Japan, while other crews from Guam, there are 3 main Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam.
Sure.
The crews on Tinian at that time were not flying bombing missions. They flew when we didn't. They were dropping mines in the Jap waters. The crews on Tinian, where the 2 atomic bombs were blown off at Tinian later on. But we'd fly up there at about 200 miles an hour, rendezvous off the coast. And after we all got up there, I never was told how many planes were on the mission, but I guess sometimes there may have been 300 of us. And then we would go in, and we always, I don't recall ever dropping anything but incendiary bombs. We would carry 40, we had 2 bomb bays. We would carry, I guess, 20 in each bomb bay. They were 500-pound bundles of sticks wrapped in a metal tape. At maybe 1,000 or 2,000 feet, the tape would break and these sticks would spread. As soon as they hit something, they would ignite.
Oh, wow.
So we started fires. Now, I sat in the forward part of this airplane. I was the other side of this turret here. One of my jobs, going up to the target, we were on radio silence, of course. You couldn't touch the key. When I was at Scott Field, of course, I spent most of my time learning Morse code. That was and a little bit about maintaining the equipment. But Morse code, I could take and receive 20 words a minute. I still can remember a few of the signals for the letters. A is da, B is da, it. SOS is did it. S is 3 shorts. O is 3 longs. S is 3 shorts. Did it, da, did it. That's how he transmitted.
Yeah.
Anyway, going up, I would get a couple of messages. One would be as to what kind of weather we could expect over the target. Another message would be whether or not we were going to get fighter support. Fighter support would come off Iwo Jima. The Marines had just taken Iwo Jima before I got there. They had just taken Iwo Jima. I don't know if you recall what Iwo Jima was taken for, but it was taken because we needed a place to land B-29s. Because it was about 1,300 mile trip up to Japan, about 2,600 mile round trip, and you had just enough fuel to get back. If you had any problem, you were in trouble. You went down in the Pacific, right. And they were losing a lot of B-29s. So there were about 30,000 Marine casualties taken in Iwo Jima, but they took it in March of 1945. I got over there in April. So now on our second mission, which was Yokohama, we lost an engine on the bomb run. We had a serious oil leak in engine number 3, which now, okay, as soon as of course, you feather that, you shut that engine off. Now you've got you've lost 25% of your power. You're going to burn more fuel because this 2,000-pound engine is dead weight.
Right.
So we don't have enough gas to get back to Saipan. So we made an emergency landing at Iwo Jima. God-forsaken rock. There's still dead Japanese laying around the island. Spent the night there, and we took off for Saipan the next day. On the 5th mission, we had the same problem again. We lost an engine on the bomb run. Again, emergency landed at Iwo Jima. I've seen planes come in there with gapping holes. We didn't have a lot of, the Japanese Air Force wasn't that much anymore, but their anti-aircraft fire was very ample. As soon as you got over Japan, you were exposed to anti-aircraft fire. And we were bombing at 10,000 feet. Originally, they were bombing at 30,000 feet. The B-29 was the first pressurized aircraft, and at 30,000 feet, we could fly in our shirt sleeves. Unlike the B-17s at 24 in Europe, at 30,000 feet, they wore electric heated suits to keep warm. But they started out bombing at that altitude, but they were missing their targets, so we went in at 10,000 feet when I was there, which...
Because of so much distance and that wind that's coming at you,
yeah,
you have no accuracy over your bombs.
That's probably the reason. Yeah, so we were much more accurate. So on that 5th mission, we again lost an engine, again landed at Iwo Jima. Now, it might be of interest to people what a day in my life might be like when I'm going to fly a mission. You might, certainly when you get over there overseas, I had no duties but to fly. Now, if you'll notice that, I flew 11 missions in 6 weeks' time, about 2 missions a week, about what we were flying. Wow. There was more missions than that. We didn't fly every mission. Say there were 3 or 4 missions a week we would fly in 2 of them. But that was enough, of course, because on a mission I'd be up for about 30 hours without sleep. Because my job, of course, going up to the target, you're a little nervous. I can understand you might be a little excited. So you're not sleepy. Coming home now, most of the crew can sleep. There's 2 pilots. The gunners can sleep all the way up and all the way back. But my job as a radio operator coming home was to listen for 29s in trouble. If I heard a B-29 sending an SOS and Guam did not respond to his message, I repeated that message for him.
Right.
Hopefully someone could take a fix on this aircraft and help them out.
Right.
So I'd do that 2 or 3 times at every mission. I'd hear some B-29 SOS, and Guam didn't respond.
Really?
Didn't get the message. Of course, it's a great distance.
Every mission you were experiencing SOSs with B-29s.
Yes. That was my main job coming home. On about 4 or 5 of the 11 missions I flew, I was assigned the strike report over the target. Strike report, I inquired of the captain, Ditherton, how successful the mission looked. He would say, looked successful. I would relay that message back to Guam, about 1,400 miles. Now, of course, every time I sent a message, the Japs would jam me. Every time I would send something, I could hear the key. They'd be banging on their key to interrupt our message. So the 20 words a minute that I could send and receive, in combat, you'd send about 4 or 5 words a minute, hopefully not having to repeat.
Right.
Because the more you're on the air, the more chance the Japs have of finding out your location. So you didn't want to repeat. But all 4 or 5 times that I sent the strike report, I got it across because I was transmitting around 1,600 miles by that time. So maybe the next morning, your Chicago Tribune might say 329 successfully bombed Japan. Maybe I was partly responsible for that. I don't know. But a typical day, say we were flying, we would go to the mess hall. Mess hall is what you call the kitchen. And there was a bulletin board, and the bulletin board would indicate every crew had a number, 4-digit number. If your number was on there, you were going to fly that day. So we all had our special meetings. The pilots had their meeting, the bombardiers had theirs, the navigators, the gunners, the engineers, the radar uppers had our meeting. That's when we would learn what the target was. Not until then. After the meetings, Ralph Kaler, the flight engineer, and I would go up to the line. He'd visually inspect the airplane we were assigned to that day. I would check the radio equipment, see if that was running. Probably set up my frequencies on my transmitter and receiver. Maybe around 6, 7 o'clock, a bus would come by, pick us up, stop at a hangar where we'd get our parachutes. Most of us, we had a harness, but we wore chest packs. The 2 pilots had backpacks. Their parachute was part of the harness. Mm-hmm. It was a permanent thing. The rest of us, if you're operating at a desk and writing, you had to take your chest pack off. You had 2 eye hooks onto the harness. The harness I had throughout my entire career, the same harness. It was adjusted to fit me comfortably. So we stop, pick up our parachutes, get up to the line. One of the ground mechanics would be testing the engine. We'd aboard at around 8:30, and around 9 o'clock we'd take off for Japan.
Man.
That was a day in my life. Now, I wouldn't sleep. Tay was up at 7 o'clock the morning before. I was awake all night. We'd hit the target about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. By the time I got back to Saipan, it'd be 10 o'clock. We'd get off the airplane, and we'd go through a hangar, and we had shots of booze, shots of whiskey lined up, or coffee. I took the shots of whiskey. I took 2.
Wow.
Then we'd have a steak dinner. And then we'd go shower and sleep if you could. We stayed in Quonset huts, corrugated steel huts, half hut with a dirt floor and cots to sleep in. Our bedding was a pillow without a pillowcase. The blanket was an olive drab wool blanket. Of course, it's pretty tropical there, pretty hot. And that was the day in a night. As I said, I'd be up about 30 hours. After 11 missions, on July 3rd was our last mission, we were informed that we were returning to the States for lead crew training. I guess to lead formations. We were going to report to Lake Muroc, California, which is near Los Angeles, August 1st, 1945. We finally left Saipan around the middle of July. Landed at Hamilton Field, San Francisco. Now in the military, I was to report to Mather Field around Los Angeles August 1st. So I had 2 weeks. What am I going to do with that 2 weeks? I didn't have much money. But while I was in Saipan, I sent, as a corporal, flying corporal, basic pay for a corporal was $66. With overseas flying time, combat time, I about doubled that. I made $120 a month.
Wow.
So I sent it all home, but $12 a month. $12 a month bought me, I smoked, bought my cigarettes, bought my cigars, my pipe tobacco, 6 warm beers a week, 6 warm Cokes. I could buy all that in $12 a month.
Wow.
And that kept me out of poker games. Because you could lose your paycheck in an hour's time over there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now, when we were informed we were coming back to the States, Captain Netherton asked me, when you get back there, you may have time to get home. Do you have any money? I said, I've got about $30. He said, I'm going to give you a 5th of whiskey. The officers got 4/5 a month. You know what I got for that 5th of booze? $25. That's what it was worth.
Wow.
So the guy slept next to me. There was always some crews that were almost destroyed. And the extra gunners, it was kind of rough because they didn't fly very often. They had to fill in for somebody. And it was kind of depressing for them. The fellow next to me was a gunner who lost his crew. He had become an alcoholic. He gave me $25 for my fifth of booze. Yeah. So when I got back, well, anyway, at Hampton Field, someone told me, go to room so and so, and because there's flights all over the country, military flights. Maybe there's something to Midway Airport in Chicago. Sure enough, there was. Uh, you have to stay awake because when they call you, you better be there because the plane is going to take off without you if you're not there.
Right.
So after about 12, 14 hours, I finally got on a flight to Midway. I don't know, we must have spent almost a whole day getting to Midway. Must have made a half a dozen stops. We had no O'Hare at that time, you know, it was just Midway.
Right.
So I got back there and around the 20th of July. I called my folks, and my mother thought, oh my God, you must be hurt. You're home. You know, she was afraid I was hurt. I said, no, I'm fine, but I'd like a ride home. You want to come out and get me. So I got to spend about a week at home. Now,
This is upon transferring back to the States from Sacramento.
well, it was a temporary thing. We were to be at Lake Rock, California for 30 days training and then return to Saipan.
Okay.
Well, on my, let's see, you know, I get my memory straight here. Yes, on my, let's see. Oh, I reported to Mather Field, Sacramento, Mather Field, Los Angeles. Around the middle of August, you know what happened in the middle of August?
Huh.
The war ended.
Right.
The 2 atomic bombs were dropped, which was news to us. We thought we were bombing Japan for a land invasion. So that was all news to us. But we completed the 4 weeks there. We completed our training. And then they sent us back up to Sacramento, Mather Field, where we originally went before we went overseas. So we thought we were going back to Saipan. Well, week after week went on, nothing happened. Finally, they sent us home on a 45-day rest and recuperation furlough, it was called. They didn't know what to do with us. So I went home for 45-day furlough. What's this, around September, October, I guess, 45. Then I was to report to Santa Ana, California for redistribution. I didn't know what they'd do with me. Maybe I end up being a radio instructor at Scott Field or something like that. Seemed like a sensible thing. But on the train to Santa Ana, I picked up a paper one morning and we were being discharged on a point system. And they had, now with the war over, they started lowering the number of points needed to get out.
Right.
They dropped at 5 points. I said, I've got it. We always knew how many points we had. I knew I had enough, so when I got to Santa Ana, I got discharged.
You had to petition to be discharged.
No, I didn't. No. I got out there, and all I had to do was say, look at my records. You'll see that I have enough points. Well, there was a mistake in my records. They didn't have, we were awarded the Air Medal for one of our missions. And I knew that was the case. Well, it wasn't on my records. Well, what can I do about this? Well, if you have an officer to vouch for you. Well, I knew John Capozza and I were the only 2 of the crew that was going to Santa Ana. John Capozza right here. So I spent a day hunting John down at that base. But I said, all you have to do is sign this. He signed it. That was all I needed. So I was discharged. Went to visit an aunt and uncle in Northern California for about a week. And then I took a train to St. Louis. Eventually married the girl that I met while I was at Scott Field. So that was the end of my military career. I would say this, I'm proud of my service. I took my job very seriously.
We're still going.
Do you want chili?
It doesn't matter. Thank you.
I took my job seriously, proud of what I did. I was disappointed that I only got to be a corporal because when I finished radio school, I was told I would be a staff sergeant when I got to Saipan. But on one of our training missions, Clyde Netherton, the captain, came to see me at my position and said, I got good news and bad news for you, Reiger. I said, well, give me the good news. Well, the guys on the ground say you're a terrific radio operator. The bad news, you're going to remain a corporal.
Mm.
They have their quota of sergeants.
Mm.
But all the second lieutenants made first lieutenant. So they're paid to be a commissioned officer.
Yeah.
That was, I thought I was going to be the difference being in the pay.
Yeah.
I
Well,
made 100, as a staff sergeant, I probably would have made about $185 a month instead of 120. So that was, but I would say, did I enjoy myself? Well, I wouldn't want to have to do it again because I flew 11 missions, and on every one of them, when you board that aircraft, you're not sure if you're coming back.
you were saying that part of your duty on the return trip, obviously you're maintaining radio silence on your way out so that you can't be tracked and people don't know that something's coming. Dropping bombs, they know that you're there. So on the return trip, you're listening for an emergency
29's in
signal.
trouble.
How many, on any given mission, how many planes are going out? How many planes aren't coming back?
Well, we never knew how many planes were flying.
Okay.
And they never report to you, so no, it's not coming back. All you know is there's an empty bed in your Quonset hut that night.
Yeah.
He didn't come back. Now, the military is, the bad news, and they're pretty secretive about that.
Right.
Though I never knew. I later learned we had maybe as many 329s in a bombing mission. I have since read during the entire time over there, we lost about 450 B-29 aircraft.
Wow.
More than half of it was due to mechanical problems, not shot down. When we were over the target, our biggest fear was the anti-aircraft, of course, and the kamikaze pilots. The kamikazes were Japanese pilots who, when they took off, they knew they weren't coming back. Their job was to ram our 29. In other words, take us
mid-air.
Mid-air.
Wow.
That's what we feared greatly. I can remember the gunners seeing these guys, and they scared the hell out of you. Yeah.
I mean, they weren't just trying to shoot you down, they were trying to crash into you.
That's right.
Were any of them successful?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I didn't personally know anybody,
Right.
but I lost two friends. Aloysius Reiger was killed on a training mission, and Charlie Reeves was lost at sea. This aircraft here, before we left Topeka, we paid somebody $25 to paint the name of it. We gave the plane a name. You know this song, Sentimental Journey?
Mm-hmm.
That was just came out. So we named it, we had it fancily painted on the fuselage, Sentimental Journey. We got the Saipan, never saw that plane again.
Wow.
We flew different planes.
Gotcha.
Airplane number, sometimes we flew the same, but we never saw this, but
Gotcha.
it didn't survive. The
Wow.
Sentimental Journey went down. Yeah, that reached me. Yeah. We were, my crew was only together, see, we met around November of 44. In about 10 months' time is all the time we were together. Because after August, we separated, we went our different ways, and we were discharged. So we weren't together that long. But we had a good relationship. The other was from Indianapolis. He was a fine young captain, marvelous pilot. Had a lot of confidence in him. But that's my story.
What did you do after you came back?
Well, I got married shortly. I went to work at St. Louis, went to work in a factory.
Okay.
I inquired of some of the airlines if they had any use for someone with my experience. They had none. So that was that. I went to work for a factory. I went to work within a couple of weeks after I got to St. Louis. I feel like before I went to service, I was a schoolboy. I had jobs, summer jobs, Saturday jobs, but I never had a full-time job. So I thought I could probably find a job as a junior draftsman. I had an engineering course in high school and Wright Junior College. Had a lot of mechanical drawing. So I applied for it. I didn't see any draft. They all wanted senior draftsmen, which I wasn't qualified, but I answered an ad from Chanison Electric, who made electric motors and generators. Mr. Chanison was about a 75-year-old engineer and a doctor of medicine both.
Wow.
He hired me. I guess he liked servicemen. He said, I'll put you to work, make 75 cents an hour. You're working 10 hours a day. We're working six days a week. So I just figured that time and a half over 40 hours, I'd make pretty good money. But it's a real sweatshop. But the good times didn't last. Within a year, we were catching up. You know, we didn't build any automobiles for 4 years. But after about 1 year of steady production, the economy slowed up. There started to be layoffs at Chanison Electric. The second layoff they're going to get me. Well, I had about 3 promotions in a year and a half I was at Chanison Electric. Somebody was looking after me. Maybe Mr. Chanison was, but I had promotions. And of course I worked hard. This was a union shop, and I noticed whenever the foreman left the department, the work stopped. When the foreman came back, here comes Frank, they all start to work again. I didn't do that. I kept working, and I think it was noticed. So the second layoff, I thought they were going to get me. They didn't. They laid someone else off in the department, but they had to take him back because I should have been laid off. They didn't lay me off, but the third layoff, I got the pink slip. Pink slip, yeah, got the pink slip. But the superintendent said, before you leave today, see me in the locker room. I think I know what was planned. They were probably going to say, stay home for a couple of weeks, we'll call you back. But I didn't want to work in a factory anymore. So I took my new wife. By that time I had a young son. I came back to Chicago and moved in with my folks. I got a job at Wonder Bread. I became a Wonder Bread man. Now that job, training pay was $55 a week to trade. When you got a bread route, you made $65 a week in commission. So I ran a few vacation routes. Then a few months I got a bread route. And not a very big one. I was making $85 a week. A year on that route, I got another route, a bigger route. I worked hard. Within about 2 years, I was making $120 a week, 6 days a week. But I made good money. My marriage, after 7 years, went down the tube. We got divorced. I have 2 sons from that marriage. Met Joan. After a couple of years of being divorced, we got married. We have a daughter. After 13 years with Wonder Bread, I became a supervisor after 8 years. I gave that job 5 years. If I'm not a sales manager at a bakery or a plant manager, I'm leaving the business. After 5 years, I quit Wonder Bread. Went to work for Simon Ice Company, not selling car waxes, floor waxes for hospitals, 55-gallon drums. After 4 years in the territory, I became a regional manager. There were 3 regional managers, East Coast, Central. I became regional manager for the Central Division. After 2 years, I left Simon Ice. Went to work for a conveyor belt manufacturer in South Side Chicago. Was very successful. Within about a year and a half, I doubled my salary at Simon Ice. After 4 years, I became a field sales manager. That was in 1970. I became field sales manager. We had about 6 fellows under me. In 1971, we had two conveyor belt manufacturing firms in our company. We had one in Cincinnati, one in Chicago. They moved us both to Paducah, Kentucky. They didn't move me. I stayed in Chicago. But I became general sales manager over both facilities when they moved them to Paducah. After about a year, I had pressure to move to Paducah, so I moved my family to Paducah. About a year later, the general manager passed away, and I was promoted to general manager.
Wow.
In 9 years' time, I went from territory salesman to a general manager of the plant. Of course, I should have been suspicious because by this time when I first started with Imperial Belting, it had just been purchased by Portick Incorporated out of Oak Brook, Illinois. Portick was in the Railroad Products Division business. They made a joiner that connected railroad tracks together. That's what they made. Well, in the 50s, the railroad industry began to suffer. Trucks and airplanes were taking over. So Portick got into material handling. They purchased a conveyor belt manufacturer out near Denver and two conveyor belt manufacturers, one in Cincinnati and one in Chicago. About that time is when I went to work for them, when they were just changing hands. So Portick considered me part of the old regime, and they didn't like the old regime around. I should have realized this because they took a year to find a replacement for me as general manager. They'd like to go outside. Of course, when they brought in the new general manager, I was fired. But that didn't disturb me too much. I had quite a reputation in the conveyor belt industry by that time. So within 2 weeks' time, I had another job. That took us, I had to leave Paducah. My family didn't mind that. My daughter and my wife didn't like Paducah very well. There wasn't any Marshall Fields there. That was the main problem. I liked it there. It was a town of 37,000 with 37 Baptist churches. But we had a beautiful home for under $40,000. I built a 3,000 square foot colonial two-story house for under $40,000.
Wow.
Taxes were $250 a year, $250 a year. Nice.
That's not bad.
Climate's pretty good, warmer winters. But when I left Portick, I had to leave there. So I had an opportunity to go with Scandura Belting. I knew the president of that company quite well. I had a choice of going to Dallas or Houston or New York. I chose New York. It was getting a little late in my career, and I thought, I think I'd appreciate going to New York. It was expensive to live in the New York area. We moved to New Jersey. Spent 4.5 years there.
Wow.
After 4.5 years, I got transferred back to Chicago. Joan wanted to come home. Our daughter finished college out there. She went to, when we were in Paducah, she started at Western Kentucky. When we moved to the East Coast, she decided coming out one summer, she much preferred New York to Paducah. So she spent 2 years at Fairleigh Dickinson, a private school.
More Marshall Fields.
Yeah. So, but I got us transferred back to Chicago. And eventually I got out of the conveyor belt business. I had traveled extensively for many years now. And I got quite ill in New Orleans in one trip. So I changed my career a little bit the last few years and didn't travel anymore. So we spent the last 32 years in Naperville, Illinois. We had a lovely condominium there. And then 2 years ago, we went into senior housing in Naperville, Spring Meadows. We were there about 1.5 years, and we realized how much nicer it would be if we lived closer to our daughter. Because when you get to our age, you start leaning more on your kids. So now we live 15 minutes from Nancy, my daughter with Joan. And we're quite content where we are. We have a nice apartment.
Nice.
2 meals a day. Pretty nice life now. But of course, doctors have become our social life. Without them, I don't know what we'd do.
Right. Frequent visits.
Yes. Well, that's about my story.
Well, was there anything that you thought I was going to ask, or anything that you wanted to add that we didn't
No, anything
discuss?
you want to ask?
You wanted to add.
Is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think you got it
Yeah.
pretty complete.
Yeah, I learned quite a bit, and I didn't. There's so much history there. Your service and your time during the war.
I was a very well-trained fellow. I was only in combat area 3 months out of 2 years and 4 months in service. I was very well trained.
Hmm.
Spent a lot of time at radio school. Flew a lot of training missions out of Pio, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
for about 4 or 5 months. So I felt very well trained. I was well prepared for my job. I took it very seriously because you count on one another for your lives.
You have to.
Yeah, yeah. I'm proud of it. This means a lot to me.
Yeah. Would you say that this experience exemplifies your time in the military?
My what?
That experience, does it exemplify your service?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'd say so. Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad I was able to do it. I wouldn't want to have to do it again.
I certainly understand that.
Yeah. Because I know what it is to realize you may die at every minute.
Yeah, that's not a way to go to work every day.
No. No.
And it struck me, how you said that when you returned from missions, there was just a hangar, there was food, and there were beverages, and you went and had a steak dinner. Not many people come home from work that way.
No. No.
Yeah.
No. You're just glad to get your feet on the ground. Yeah.
Well, so was there an element of celebration in that?
No.
I mean, a sense of relief that you're back.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Of course. Yes. I had no chores. Never had KP duty in Saipan.
Yeah.
Only a couple times I was assigned guard duty up in the line where the planes were.
Yeah.
There were still Japs on the Saipan.
Hmm.
And they were known to come out once in a while. Our entertainment over there was movies at night. We always carried our 45s with us because they were known to come out of the hills and look at the movies too. So we carried our 45s with us,
Sure.
which is the only weapon we carried on a mission. No, it felt good to get home. And after 11, we were told we were going back to the States. That was a relief to know that.
Yeah.
I felt good about that. Of course, we never knew. Being told that we were going back to the States for lead crew training was quite a surprise because we were never told how many missions you'd fly before you came home. We didn't know was it 30 or 50. And I realized that I figured, well, I'm probably going to be here a year. Well, at the rate we were flying missions, at 2 a week, in 6 weeks' time, I had 11 missions in.
Yeah.
It'd take about 3-4 months and you'd have 30, 35 missions in, see? Maybe you'd go home after that. I don't know. I never heard how many missions. I guess they'd send you home when they were ready to send you home.
Right. When things start dying down.
Yeah, yeah. But I never went back to Japan. Now, I had to do over again. I guess I wouldn't mind spending a couple of years in Japan. It'd been quite an experience. But didn't get that opportunity. Did want it at the time. We were anxious to get out.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have to say, I guess.
All right. Well, on behalf of the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, and for myself, having served as a veteran, thank you for your service
You're very welcome.
and the work that you've done for your country and the time that you spent here with us today.
I enjoyed it.